they weren't very popular 30-plus years ago.
Right when they first started in the odd, they were doing great.
That was a big deal,
yeah,
and it's still very much a big deal. Josh Byrne on the West Her Hotline. Mike and Chris here. Josh, thank you for being a part of our show today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Are you in the Buffalo area right now?
Yeah. I live here full time.
Okay, good. I didn't know. So this is, in essence, I guess, an off week in terms of game play anyway, for you guys. A little bit of a break here before the finals next week. Is your body welcoming that because of how, physical and all the travel back and forth from Vancouver? How are you feeling physically?
Yeah, it's definitely nice to get a break. I think people forget too that, we finished the season 10 weeks straight without a bye, as well as, 2 doubleheaders in those 10 weeks. So it's 12 games in 10 weeks. So then you add the first and second round into that with no breaks as well. This bye weekend is definitely very, very much needed.
Is there a desired outcome in the other series, like who you would like to see more in this championship round, or do you not want to provide any bulletin board material potentially, Josh?
No, I mean, to be completely honest with you, it doesn't matter for us. You know what I mean? It's always been more about us and not as much about who we're playing. Obviously, there's little things that you have to try to exploit no matter who you're playing and game plan for. And, both teams have different strengths. So, at the end of the day, it's just focusing on us and making sure that we're healthy and we're ready to go.
We sort of alluded to it as we were introducing you here that, the history of the franchise, like it hit the ground running here back in the 90s, back in the old odd before the move across the street to the newer building. And now you've been here for some great success, but there was great success back then. I'm curious how much you could tell our audience about the reputation of the Buffalo market as a lacrosse market, given the history the franchise has had great success here. And of course, certainly lately with 2 championships in a row and a chance for a third.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the pro lacrosse market in Buffalo is truly incredible. I think Buffalo is just a sports city as it is. Mm-hmm. I think at the end of the day, if you're someone who's going to come out and, work their ass off and, do what's best for the team, and ultimately, the city's going to see that, and the city's going to see that energy, and they're going to, really just enjoy watching that. I think the city will get behind you, and it's obviously been our backbone all year with Bandit Land, and Bandit Land's been a thing for a long time, and it's cool to be a part of such great history.
With Josh Byrne, it is reminiscent of the Bills, I think, what the Bandits vibe is, or the crowd, the scene with the Bandits, and how you have such a loud, loyal, supporting crowd. And, the Bills, of course, the fan base has that reputation too. When you go on the road, when the Bandits play on the road, maybe I'm sure some places are more like here than others, but I wonder just how extreme or how significant maybe the home field advantage, right, that you think the team enjoys.
It's massive. At the end of the day, lacrosse is growing, all across North America. And, we do go into some buildings where, they have a good fan base, but at the end of the day, nothing compares to Buffalo and Bandit Land. We also are super fortunate where a lot of Bandit Land actually travels extremely well. We've got, sometimes 300, 400, 500 fans going crazy, and sometimes, taking over other people's stadiums, especially if it's somewhere close. But even, when we were in Vegas last year, we definitely had more fans in the stands than they did, and it was basically a home game. So we're super fortunate to have, such loyal and supporting fans willing to travel, willing to support us no matter where we go. So, we're definitely thankful.
That's a Bills comp, right? The Bills go to L.A.
right,
or something like that, and you can hear the crowd.
Right. Josh,
how... Man, it's awesome.
Yeah, how do you explain the sustained success here? Is it just a winning culture? I mean, obviously, like yourself, excellent players on the team. You're the defending NLL MVP as well as Finals MVP. MVP from last season. So there's obviously talent, but I'm sure there's a lot of talent in the league. But you guys have managed to rise above. Is it just like a know-how? Is there just an expectation that's maybe higher than other places because of the sustained success the team has had?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like any sport, right? If a team wants to be successful, a lot of times they have to go the distance and lose. It's a weird thought and a weird feeling to kind of get behind, or they have to have gone through some heartbreak, and the core of that team has to go through a little bit of heartbreak, and we did that. We've been through few championships in a row where we've lost.
Yep.
And other guys that were part of 2016 team where they lost to SAS. So, I think ultimately, the losses stimulate that motivation, and the understanding of what it takes to win. You see it across all sports. When playoffs come around, all of a sudden those whistles start going away, right? They let men be men, and they let guys play, and your first couple times when you get deep into the playoffs, you're like, what's going on here? Like, this is ridiculous.
Right.
And then you start to learn from it, and then you expect it, and then you're the one setting the standard. So, I think it's kind of sad to say, but ultimately, success stems from heartbreak, and we've had a lot of that. So, we're just using those losses as fuel.
Maybe this just goes without saying too, but as a native and having worked here for so long, talking about sports with fans for many years, it's interesting this moment with the Bandits, and I think I'd have to say that it might couple somewhat with the Sabres' struggles. But my son plays high school lacrosse at Canisius, and we drive from Grand Island to West Seneca for his games. And the last time I did that, I saw you and Dane Smith on 3 billboards on that trip down 190 toward Stransky. So this really is, I think, a moment where you guys have, I'm not asking you anything here, I guess, but you guys have become household names in Buffalo, and it's a function of your success, and it's been 7-8 years. I've seen you coach kids, you and Dane Smith coaching down at Classic Rink in East Aurora. So I guess that's obviously something important to you guys too, continuing ways of really becoming such a strong part of the community.
Yeah, and I think you honestly nailed it, right? Like, at the end of the day, both Dane and I have moved here. We have a good group of guys that have moved here and live here full time. And we've been received so well from Buffalo that, we just want to give back to community. And, Dan and I have started our own, lacrosse teams and leagues, and have tried our best to give back to community in any way that we can. And I think ultimately this city is just full of hardworking, loyal, genuine people. And when they see, other athletes that are willing to, kind of march alongside them, they take them in under their wing, and that's kind of the DNA of this city, and we just want to give back any way that we can.
Josh, how about the sport overall? With the emergence of the PLL here in the last few years, do you feel like the sport is cresting? Is it still rising? Like where bigger and better? Like what do you think the future holds for lacrosse, if it's something you've ever given much thought to?
I think it's on the way up, right? And and at the end of the day, like all sports, it starts at the youth levels, at the grassroots levels, and it's being able to get sticks in the hands of younger kids. A lot of kids don't have the opportunity to even play lacrosse or even know what it is. It's different when you can go to Dick's Sporting Goods and buy a basketball or a soccer ball, and you can have 10 guys playing and having 2 full games going with 1 or 2 balls, where
right.
You need so many more sticks to be able to play, and each person needs their own sticks, and there's a lot more that goes into it. So that's part of why we do our best to try to grow the game as much as we can, because we do think it's such a special and awesome game that if more people had access to it, I think it would grow even more. And to be honest with you, I think Buffalo is really the blueprint, especially at the pro level, of what the games can the entertainment is like anyone that goes to the Bandits game, they walk out of there being like, I want to do that again. That was awesome. Right. And, I think in other cities, if more and more people kind of catch on and more fan bases catch on to, how we do things in Bandit land, it gets addicting and people love it. And, ultimately that's where the sport's going to grow the most.
You do need a lot of balls for these games. Like the one basketball point, my son goes outside. I buy him a bag of lacrosse balls. He's good. He's a shooter, but they're gone in a week. So then we bought a bit because he's not going to just aim for the middle of the net, right? You can't get better.
Yeah, exactly.
So we bought a bigger net to go to hang behind the net,
right.
And then it was like a month, and then we're out. So we bought a third net to go behind the bigger net, and hopefully, we've got it now.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and on top of that, the balls get a little bit greasy sometimes if they, outside for too long, or if they get used up too much, and then all of a sudden it's not throwing true. Whereas, for the most part, it takes a pretty long time for a basketball to get worn down. Same thing with the football, and even a hockey puck, right? There's not really too much difference from hockey puck to hockey puck, right? So, at the end of the day, there's so many intricate things that go into the game of lacrosse and the stringing of the sticks. Everyone's got their sticks strung differently. So there's so much that goes on, and I think that's the other part is like a lot of kids sometimes they'll pick up a bad stick and they'll try to throw with it and it hooks right to the ground, and that's what's the dumb sport. Why do I want to do this? It's just frustrating. It's annoying. So the more that, we can help with that as well. Half the time when I'm coaching, I'm fixing kids' sticks because I've been stringing sticks since I was probably 6 years old. So,
right.
It's an amazing sport, and the more people that get behind it is great. And Buffalo is definitely at the forefront of that.
I would say too, just as in closing, my observation on the PLL, they've had some really good ideas. Putting teams in particular markets and the way they've grown that. They're on ESPN, so they're visible. And I'm excited about that league. Will you be back in Carolina? Chaos?
I will not be this year. No, I've got to. We've been going for so long. Championship to championship, and while success is great, ultimately your season gets extended longer and longer, and going back and forth in both leagues where we've been successful, in a lot of leagues, and then you also throw in, international games with Team Canada. Mm-hmm. We haven't really had much time off, so I'm not going to be going back to Carolina this year. Unfortunately, I love the PLL. I love Charlotte. It's an incredible city, and definitely. I just love what they're doing with the sport, and the Ravens are doing a great job of pushing the sport to new heights. And you see the draft on ESPN and all this stuff. So it's really getting pushed into a great direction. So I'm definitely thankful for what the PLL has done for me.
Very good. And I think I maybe had forgotten when asking you that you weren't there last year. I know you were there for many years. We've seen you play. But okay. Well, Josh, thank you for today. Best of luck next weekend. And thank you on behalf of the community, if I can say that, for all the time you've put in your excellent play.
No, thank you guys. And, if I could say one thing, it's just, thank you to the city of Buffalo, man. We're so grateful, and we're definitely going to need the city's support for this next run. So appreciate you guys for having me on.
Okay. Our pleasure. Thanks, Josh. Josh Byrne on the West Her Hotline. The Bandits' first game in the finals at home next Friday night. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. We'll be right back. This is